Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and the culture. It's WallBuilders Live. It is day 30 of the unconstitutional COVID crackdown across the country. I date that back to March 19th when the first statewide stay in your home and do as you're told, you are no longer essential order came down, and then they just dropped like dominoes all across the country, and we are facing all kinds of chaos, constitutional chaos, as we try to determine what can the government do here and what can we as citizens do in this crazy, crazy time. And, of course, our focus here on the program is to look at all issues of the day, all the hot topics of the day, from a biblical, historical, and constitutional perspective. And today's Good News Friday, which normally we just fly through a ton of great stories for you on Good News Friday, but we got one specific story and one special guest today as we're going to dive into how we're fighting back on some of the religious liberty fronts, where some of these just drunk with power local and state leaders are doing everything they can to prevent any form of worship whatsoever and literally picking on the churches. Not broad-based orders that cover everybody, but literally picking on churches. So Kelly Shackelford will be with us later in the program to do some of that good news. We're here with David Barton, America's premier historian and our founder at WallBuilders. Tim Barton's with us, national speaker and pastor and president of WallBuilders. And my name is Rick Green. I'm a former Texas legislator and America's Constitution coach. Well, Tim Kelly Shackelford will be with us after the break here in a little bit. And, of course, you talk about on the front lines, he's got one of the first cases in the country dealing with religious liberty and churches being able to even come together and drive-in type situations where they're not even getting out of their car. So for our Good News Friday, we're going to have Kelly Shackelford today, and the good news is that he's already winning these battles.
Yeah, it is good news, and this is a question that we've been asking for a while, is how's the government going to handle this with churches? Are they going to cross the constitutional lines? Are they going to be able to restrain themselves and treat churches like they treat everything else, or will they single out churches? And it looked like for a while that it was going to be just kind of, inform them, give them the right information, mayors do the right thing. But this one is a different one. This one is coming after the church, treating it differently from all other businesses. And so this thing, getting into court this was a really good test case.
And guys, just to remind all the listeners, the highlight of the good news is that even in the midst of all of these attacks that are coming, because even though there is a temporary restraining order that has come down, there's been some good news, he's still got a lot of cases that he is having to deal with, battling in areas where they have not seen the victory yet. And so as we have some of these conversations, I can imagine there will be some moments people go, now, wait a second, that's a battle, that's a problem. So this isn't purely total good news when we recognize there are battles, but part of the good news is that there are groups like First Liberty who, for free, will represent pastors, represent Christians and leaders and businesses when it comes to First Liberty. And they're one of many of our friends that do this in response to attacks on religious liberty. But First Liberty certainly does a remarkable job, and they did get a victory very recently dealing with a church being told they could not operate over a Sunday and couldn't do service anymore, driving, whatever else. And so with that decision coming down, we thought it would be great to get our friend Kelly on to give an explanation about some of what they're doing and what that decision was.
Kelly Shackelford will be with us when we come back from the break. Stay with us, folks. You're listening to WallBuilders Live. The Founding Fathers of America made a habit of reading through the Bible once a year. There's no better source of wisdom, and it is applicable to every issue in our lives. What a great time for us as American citizens to take this time. If you've got extra time at home now, if you're quarantined at home and you're looking for something to do, what better thing could there be to do than to read through the Bible, maybe for the first time in your life? I tried to make this a habit several years ago, and I had a new tool to start doing that with, and it was called the Founders Bible. It gave me a chance not only to read through the Bible once a year, but also to learn history while I was doing that. And what I love about the Founders Bible is that as I'm reading that scripture, then all of a sudden there'll be an article inserted right there by that scripture about what the Founding Fathers learned from that specific verse or chapter and how they applied it to launch our nation. It's a really fun way to learn. It's incredibly empowering, and it has answers for today. The Bible is full of all the right answers for today. In fact, it's the only source that has all the right answers. So if you haven't read through the Founders Bible, I challenge you and encourage you. Get a copy of the Founders Bible today. It's available at wallbuilders.com, and we even have a digital version, so you can do this on your phone or iPad or computer. Check out the Founders Bible today. Make it a part of your regular reading throughout the year, but right now is a great opportunity to read through the Founders Bible. Check it out today at wallbuilders.com. Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us. Kelly Shackelford back with us from First Liberty. Kelly, appreciate your time, man. Know you're running hard today. You got a lot of clients out there and churches that are really being overrun by government, saying they can't even, I can't believe this, they can't even meet with drive-in churches. Thank you for stepping up and defending our religious liberty.
Well, it's a privilege. We knew when this thing started that there was immediately an issue, and so we posted a whole landing area of our website where churches could come, get information on sort of where does religious freedom interact with these orders that are being passed and what's over the line, and just laying out the constitutional framework, and even started doing a call every Friday with church leaders and national religious leaders across the country so they could ask questions, and we do that every Friday. But we never, we knew eventually we'd probably have to do something. We didn't think it would be this fast and this outrageous, and now we just got a whole flurry of these cases. But the good news is that on Easter weekend, we have the first battle that ended, and the church won, and that's a great first start.
You mentioned the website, Kelly. I just want to give that out a couple of times today, firstliberty.org, firstliberty.org, both for churches that are in the middle of this fight and need advice, and frankly, right there on the website, you're going to get a lot of advice, but also for all of our listeners out there, great opportunity to give and invest in religious liberty by making a donation to Kelly and his team. Kelly, did you knew you were going to defend crosses in cemeteries and crosses on the highway and kids being able to pray at lunch? Did you ever think you would be defending being able to drive up and have church out of your car and your fellow parishioners being able to worship the Lord together from 20 feet away in different cars?
Never. I mean, really, I could say it no better than the judge, who I don't know if everybody's seen it. His order is flying around the country because there are so many believers and even people who aren't believers that so appreciate that one judge has sort of started to reinsert some constitutional sanity into our society. He starts off his opinion with this quote: "On Holy Thursday, an American mayor criminalized the communal celebration of Easter." I mean, that's how he started. And
wow.
His ending, this is just his first paragraph. He said, "The mayor's decision is stunning and it is beyond all reason unconstitutional." So just a wham right at the beginning, and then just a great opinion. So it's a good, at least first win. I mean, we all knew we were going to have this battle, and to get the first victory is very important, but it's happening everywhere. We've got worse cases than the Louisville case. I mean, the Greenville, Mississippi case we have is even worse than Louisville, because there the squad car surrounded the African-American church parking lot and the 6 cars that were there for their service. And the officer on camera said to the pastor, quote, "Your rights have been suspended." That's a
wow.
direct quote, because of the order that the mayor had done there.
Kelly, let me ask you something on this, because when I read the order from the judge in Louisville, it's a temporary restraining order. So it's temporary. You got to go back and have your hearing later, and then you get your final order. I don't recall a TRO that had that much explicit slap-down language in it. Is that unusual for judges to do that in TRO?
It is. That he knew this was significant. And by the way, there's a lot of intrigue that people don't even know about. The only time I will have talked about this is on your show, but guess who this judge is? He's essentially the godson of Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Oh, my.
No kidding. I had read that he clerked for Kavanaugh. I didn't know he had a relationship to McConnell.
McConnell loves this guy. Thought he was brilliant as a kid, met him, and just sort of adopted him as somebody he thought he really thought highly of. He was just nominated by the president to be a new federal court of appeals judge on the D.C. Circuit.
Wow.
So there's more to the story even than people are hearing, but he knew, he was smart enough to know this is serious. I mean, they not only threatened the churches in Kentucky, and in particular in Louisville here, with being criminally, prosecuted for having a drive-in Easter service. But the governor asked the police all over the state to go on Sunday and to write down the license plates of all cars in church parking lots, and said that they would be under a 14-day quarantine that they would enforce with criminal law as well.
Kelly, you and I talked back and forth a couple of weeks ago, and at that point in time, I was asking you, because you'd intervened with Frisco and McKinney and all these other cities, and I asked you, I said, it looks to me like right now you got a lot more ignorance going with public officials than animus. They don't really hate religion. They're just issuing orders that are overly broad, and they're doing things. And in so many cases, those are backing down. But it looks like now what's left is the animus. That what we're seeing is people really stepping out with a dislike for religion and really wanting to, as you said, criminalize or punish religious expressions. Absolutely.
I'd say it's sort of a mix, David, of there's animus and there's arrogance. Certainly Louisville is an example of massive arrogance. I mean, I think Americans cringe at the idea of government officials going into church parking lots on Easter Sunday and writing down their license plates.
Yeah.
You feel like you're in some different country or different time. By the way, I was asked this by the CNN reporter. He said, what ended up happening this weekend? Did the police go by? And I said, yeah, they did go by, and they gave them a thumbs up. I thought, that's the United States of America right there.
I love it.
I thought that was great. But the one that's really, to me, it shows real hostility is the one in Greenville, Mississippi, David. That one is incredible because you've got an order there that was passed by the mayor. It's only 3 or 4 sentences or 5 sentences, and it's aimed only at the church. And it specifically tells churches that they can't hold any sort of services, including, and specifically mentions, drive-in services. So here's what that means in Greenville. It means 100 cars in the parking lot of Walmart where people are getting in and out of their cars. That's fine. But in 6 cars, in this church case, on a Thursday night to have a church service where everybody is in the car with their windows rolled up, that's a crime. I mean, that's just insane. There's no rationale for that. It's just pure animus and attack against the church. And the mayor had even said that the churches are a cause of a lot of this spreading, and that's why we're aiming at the church. And so that's why you have this. If people haven't seen this, I encourage them to go to spell out firstliberty.org, go about halfway down our page or so and look on the right side, and you'll see we were on Tucker Carlson with this African-American minister where he tells the story, and it's just chilling. I mean, the idea anywhere in America where you would have the police surround the parishioners of a church who are all in their cars, and then when you ask, well, where is this they did this? It's at the church parking lot. They're at the church parking lot on church property with squad cars surrounding people who tried to come together to have a service. And people might say, well, why are they doing this? Well, a lot of these people are poor, they're elderly, they don't have access to streaming services. The only way they get a service is the way the pastor was providing in this case. And then to have them come out and threaten criminal actions against them is just, it's something you never thought you'd see.
Well, and Kelly, just to clarify, isn't it still true that under CDC guidelines that having a drive-in church is still permissible according to the CDC because you're practicing social distancing, right? You're in an enclosed position. So it would seem, even according to the CDC, this is totally fine because there have been judges who said, well, this violates some of the social parameters. No, this doesn't. CDC has even agreed this is okay.
Yeah, all of our cases with churches we're representing, the first thing that comes out in our briefing is they're following all CDC guidelines. They're following everything, but yet they're still under attack, and they're not only under attack, they're under attack in a discriminatory way. I mean, what they're doing to them, they're not doing to other groups. Of course, everybody knows it's like, well, 10 people can't be together in cars separated at a church, but 10 people can be standing next to each other, in the liquor store. Well, everybody immediately knows, well, that's nuts. That's discriminatory, and it makes no sense. And certainly that's why the judge here said that this was without any reason unconstitutional. There's no rationale for it.
Hey, Kelly, this pastor in Greenville, I watched that video that he took, his cell phone video, and you're exactly right. It was just chilling when that police officer said, your rights have basically been postponed. But he had the wisdom he's sitting there quoting the Constitution back at the guy. I mean, he really, it was good. I mean, and I assume got a hold of you guys right after it happened.
He did. And boy, you're just proud to stand with people like this. He tells he's got a tremendous story, just a tremendous story. A guy that was really, was into drugs and all kinds of stuff, and God got a hold of him and changed his life, and now he's preaching at a church, and he loves people. He told us, he said, look, my mom, if I just did this with some sort of Facebook Live or some sort of streaming, my mom couldn't watch the service. He said,
Wow.
We've got people here that don't have access. The only way we could do this is the way we were doing it to reach our people. And, we've heard about these, right? And we're, by the way, get ready. You're going to see some legal action in Mississippi as well. We're just having to get that ready. Louisville, by the way, although we won, the preliminary injunction hearing is on Tuesday. So that's coming up as well. So we got more battles there, but I can't tell you how many calls and emails and messages I've gotten from people saying, you know what, we were going to have a drive-in service at our church, and they told us we couldn't, so the church just backed down. I don't know how many times it's happened, but I bet it's 100 for one for everyone we hear, and it's a shame because that is clearly, there's no reason for that. It's a violation of the rights of the church, and I hope more and more churches will stand up and say, look, we're all for protecting our people, we're all for working with the government, but we are not going to lay the First Amendment on the floor and let you shut down the church when there's no rational reason for doing any of these type of things you're trying to do.
That's why what y'all are doing is so important, Kelly. We're so thankful for the fact that you're on the front lines and you're available to churches that need help with that. And this weekend, we just encourage all the pastors that are listening, parishioners that are listening, you got to know that these rights are not given up in a crisis like this. This pastor in Greenville is a great example standing up. Kelly, you had to get a kick out of what he said in the video about, even back in my drug days, we never had this many cops show up, even in the worst part of town. And yet here you are at the church. He couldn't believe there's more cop cars right there at his church than over where they needed them in the crime-infested part of the community.
Well, it's even more than that. He told us afterwards. We had no idea. He said every police car, every police officer on duty in the entire city was at that church at that time.
Oh, my goodness.
My goodness. Wow.
My goodness.
And then you got areas like Detroit where you got hundreds of officers in quarantine for the disease. So you need these officers out on the street. You need them out there. You got people that criminals that think this is a great time to loot and all of that. So what a waste of government resources when we need them in other places. I just hope that the word gets out that the chilling effect is lifted, because like you're saying, if it's 100 to 1, that means the chilling effect is worse than just that one church. There's 100 churches not doing it for everyone that fights back. So people got to stand up. Thanks for leading the way on this, Kelly.
Well, it's a privilege, and I would encourage people. One of the things they can do is spread the word on this, and one of the easiest ways is taking that video you're talking about where we had the pastor on with Tucker Carlson. Again, it's on go to firstliberty.org, go a little over halfway down, and you'll see the video. Just take the link and just share it. It is spreading like wildfire, and the more people that know that this is not allowed to do this to churches, the more churches that'll stand appropriately. Look, we don't want churches doing crazy stuff. We don't want them infecting their people, having 500 people and spreading the COVID-19 throughout, and they don't want to do that. We don't want dumb cases, but we do want the church, when they're doing the right thing, when they're serving people, when they're following the CDC guidelines, and yet they figured out a way to minister. We don't want that under attack, and we don't want the rights of the church reduced, not just now, but permanently into the future because of what happens now.
Amen. And we did hear the mayor of New York, initially say, hey, we're basically going to shutter you forever. We're going to shut you down for good if you don't follow what I'm telling you to do right now. Unbelievable threats.
That's right. There's a time to stand. There's a balance to all this stuff, right? I mean, churches want to protect their people. They want to be good neighbors. They want to serve people. But some of these orders would say, well, you can go get your meal as long as you go to a fast food joint or a restaurant and go through the drive-through service. But the church, who's providing a drive-through service for people who are too poor to get food or bringing food to the elderly, they can't. We're going to shut them down. Well, you can't do that. You can't treat the church differently, and it's really dumb to do so, because if you want to know who is the one that really serves and meets needs during these crises, whether it's a hurricane or whether it's a pandemic, it's while people are hoarding toilet paper, it's the church that's reaching out to people, that's serving people, that's finding people who need help. And the idea that the government would in any way restrict their freedom or treat them in a worse way is really, it's not only unconstitutional, it's just foolish.
Kelly, I got to ask you about a specific, you may already have some cases on this, but what about communion? I mean, this is vitally important to the church, and a lot of churches are trying to figure out ways to do that, whether it is a drive-through communion or they only let 10 people in the church at a time. Have you seen any cases like that, or do you have advice for pastors on how to handle that type of thing?
I haven't seen a lot. I've seen different churches trying to do different things, and, you know, I think the creativity, you know, what our Creator is the one who gave us our creativity. So I think there's a lot of creativity out there and ways to figure out ways to avoid, you know, obviously, you know, spreading this disease throughout their own community, which they would never want to do, but finding a way to really follow their scriptural mandates and the things that they're supposed to do. There's been no cases on it yet. I think it would be a very difficult case for the government, because they're now entering into one of the most sacrosanct, you know, practices that there is in religion. So I'm kind of glad there's not a bad case anywhere in this at this point, and I hope people, as they think more and pray more, come up with great ways to do these things. And I really hope that we're going to get through this quickly, and the church is going to start meeting again and getting back to normal. I know that'll take a little while, but it's too important. The church is essential in this country, and I really appreciate the governors that have acknowledged that.
FirstLiberty.org is the website to go find out more. Kelly Shackelford, thanks for fighting on the front lines for us, brother.
Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate y'all.
Quick break. We got Good News Friday today here at WallBuilders. Stay with us. You're listening to WallBuilders Live. Hey friends, it's Rick Green from WallBuilders Live, and I have had so many requests about what in the world can we be studying at home right now. You know, I got the kids at home. They're normally in school, or if you homeschool, you're looking for additional material. One Room Schoolhouse. It is a great new series WallBuilders is putting out where you literally get a tour of the WallBuilders library as Tim Barton and Jonathan Ritchie bring history to life. There's a couple of resources on this. You can go to YouTube and search for WallBuilders and look for One Room Schoolhouse. You can go to our Facebook page and get it right there on Facebook, as we do it live each Monday and sometimes additional days from there. And then you can also just go to wallbuilders.com. Scroll down to the bottom and we'll be posting the videos as they come out. This is such a great way to learn and a great way for you to share with others. Gather the family around, watch the One Room Schoolhouse, and learn some great history. It'll be vitally important to restoring our nation and bringing back these principles that made America great in the first place. Check it out, One Room Schoolhouse at wallbuilders.com. We're back on WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us on this Good News Friday, and thanks to Kelly Shackelford for being our special guest on Good News Friday. Don't usually have a guest on Good News Friday, guys, but this was too good. When we were fortunate to be able to catch Kelly, he's in the middle of it right now with cases like this all across the country.
Well, here's what I think is an unspoken part of the good news, is that we now have 191 judges on the court in the last 3.5 years that have been screened that are pretty close to what we've seen with this judge. In other words, we haven't seen the current appointees of Trump make bad decisions on religious liberty. So you now have a cadre of nearly 200 federal judges. And as these cases start moving forward, like the one Kelly is filing with Mississippi and others, as they start moving forward, the chances are going to be really, really good that the church gets not only some great protection, but maybe some really strong rhetoric, just like this judge in Louisville gave us.
Yeah, it's one of the things we've talked about where you've seen some of these appeals courts that they numbers have shifted in more constitutional directions in some of these appeals courts to where even right out in California, what we would consider one of the most liberal of all of the appeals courts, it now is really close to being an even split between constitutionalists and liberals in these judges that represent them. And around the rest of the nation, there are some really, really good courts of appeals, some judges in those different federal districts. And so it does give a lot of hope that even though we're still dealing with a lot of these attacks, Dad, as you mentioned, that some of these attacks, it's no longer ignorance. There's levels of intentionality that people don't like religion, they don't like Christianity, they don't like the church, and they're targeting that, well, it's easy to expose that when you have people that understand the Constitution, that judges that will support and uphold the Constitution, they can go, okay, nope, we see that for what it is. That is an attack on religious liberty. That's an attack on the First Amendment. None of that's going to work. And so we definitely think there could be some positives coming from these judges.
And by the way, just before we stepped in the studio, I was going over with Tim some new decisions that have come down from federal circuit courts of appeals in favor of religious liberty. Things that have been questionable in recent years and we've had fights over, we're winning now. So this is a good reminder of what's at stake in the November election. Federal judges are at stake. And if we want to keep having good news in regard to constitutional issues that are being litigated, religious liberty and all these other things, Second Amendment, you name it, we got to keep the judges coming. And that's what November is all about, is keeping these kind of judges coming.
Once again, firstliberty.org is the website to go visit, not only to keep up with these cases across the country, or maybe you and your church are having difficulty with local officials and you need some help. Go to firstliberty.org. And if you're not having trouble, what a great time to make a donation to First Liberty and help them fight these battles. Be sure and check that out today at firstliberty.org. And while you're online, go to wallbuilderslive.com. You can get some more Good News Friday programs right there in our archive section, and a great way to catch up right now while you're stuck at home. Listen to some of those other programs throughout the week, and you'll get educated on a constitutional, historical, and biblical perspective of all of the things that we're facing in our culture right now. Great place also to make a contribution. Click on that contribute button at wallbuilderslive.com. No better, no more important time than right now when our constitutional liberties are under attack to have truth out there. Have a program like WallBuilders Live where people can get that perspective. You can come alongside us and help us by making that contribution right there at wallbuilderslive.com. We appreciate you listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided forever.